Hello, everyone. This is James Rush with Korea TESOL, and we have a guest from Japan, Dr. Naheen. She's going to present and give us some ideas about TED Talks and how we can utilize those within our classrooms and teaching opportunities. So what we are going to what I'm going to do is hand it over so she can give you the full spiel and everything that is related to her. It's been a honor and pleasure to have a few moments to get to know you, but I still know so very little. So please tell us all about yourself and what we have to expect here today.
Okay, share my screen. All right. Okay, well, thank you for joining me, especially with the last session of the weekend. I hope everyone's had a very productive weekend. My name is Naheen, and I'll be presenting on selecting, grading, and teaching TED Talks based lessons. This will be a workshop of sorts, but we're quite a small group, so when we get to that point, we can decide what's the best way to do that. I'm currently at Nagoya University of Commerce and Business in Japan, but this work is based on my PhD, where I completed my thesis at Victoria University of Wellington in New Zealand. So this workshop will be divided into the following sections. So first of all, I will talk a little bit about what is listening and how we currently teach it in the EFL context. And then we'll break it up into kind of workshop sessions where you'll have the opportunity to look at the selecting of grade talks, the grading of TED Talks, and also some ideas of teaching with TED Talks. Although this is in the listening context, we can use it in the EFL context as well, and we can also think about the other skills. So I'll also introduce some alternative approaches, as well as hopefully have some time for some Q&A at the end. So first of all, it's important to understand what is listening. And I mean, what is listening on the whole, away from the classroom, and just generally how we listen as people. There are 4 different processes which we can consider. So the first 2 are neurological and pragmatic processes. This essentially neurologically looks at our consciousness and looking at our input and thinking about what we hear and how we attend to that particular input. Pragmatically, we are then thinking about how we take that input and how we relate what we hear and what we see. So for example, nonverbal input, body gestures, facial expressions, and think about our own ideas of how we can perceive or convey meaning. More specific or familiar approaches in our own classrooms are perhaps linguistic and semantic processes. So linguistically, we're looking at how we perceive speech in that input, how we're using prosodic features such as intonation, stress to understand what the given message is, and also thinking about how we parse speech, how we break it down to understand it. Then that leads us quite neatly onto semantics and our semantic processes, where we use our memory and prior experiences of being able to understand the message to create our own meanings when we are listening to input. If we have a look at the whole process, we are generally thinking about how we interpret input, how we assemble that input, or how we put it together and break it down to understand it or think about it, comprehension. It's at that point that we're thinking of our two-way traffic and thinking about, okay, so we've listened to something, we've read something, how are we going to respond? And that's how we integrate with the other skills. So we're looking at how we can maybe speak, so in spoken production, or how we can write to respond. So with that idea in mind of how we just listen and how we deal with the input more generally, we can then take that to the classroom. And again, here are some, I hope, familiar processes that you have used in the classroom. So first of all, we can look at bottom-up and top-down processes. So the bottom-up model, of course, looks at decoding the smallest unit of sound in this case. So we're looking at what a syllable is, what a word is, and what the smallest unit of meaning is. And together with that, we think about top-down model, and we're thinking about what our background knowledge is, what our predictions are, and what the general idea of the content is. It's important that we use these as, it says, parallel processes. We want to use them together. We don't really want to break it down, so we're only teaching with bottom up or only teaching with top down. So this is going to create orchestration, where we can then create a more general and hopefully easier meaning for our students when listening. We can also think about language learning strategies, which we use in all of our skills, but specifically for listening, we can use metacognitive, cognitive, and socioaffective methods. Metacognitively, we're looking at how a learner listens, so what they are doing, how they reflect on their listening, they think about what difficulties they had and how they can potentially address those problems in future listening. Cognitively, we're looking at how we can approach the listening, what they are doing when they are listening to something, taking notes or answering questions, whereas socioaffectively, we're looking at the interaction, not only with each other, but also how they can interact with the text. So, and then they can create and check their meanings. So if we think about our processes and we think about how we are teaching in the classroom, we can look at this rather complicated model, which I hope I can break down a little bit for us. So you can see, first of all, the 4 speech bubbles around the edges here. So I'd like to think of these as the processes which I introduced, so the linguistic, semantics, pragmatics, and neurological processes. In the middle, this is what we do in the classroom, and this is what we do to break down speech. So we have our perception, so our how we perceive the speech, parsing, how we're going to break down the speech, and utilization, what we're going to do with the speech, i.e. are we going to respond or are we just going to store that message? So as Van de Grift and Go explain, they can show the cognitive processing by level in the middle of the model and how we can decode and respond to the messages in terms of our input when it comes to listening. Add to that our top-down and bottom-up processes, which we can break down into accessible tasks into the classroom. And we can also add metacognitive opportunities, so our students can reflect, monitor, and evaluate their particular listening and what they've understood. All in all, this can help regulate their use of listening strategies in the classroom when they're trying to understand something. We are going to have a look at how we can use these processes now and look more specifically at how we can grade the speech in listening input, and also how we can think about grading the vocabulary or the linguistic knowledge in listening input so our students can understand these processes and the text itself better. So if we think about teaching listening frameworks, one which I have used, and this is one which I used a lot on my PhD, was Go's task-based metacognitive instruction for listening. And you can see that there are the familiar stages of pre-listening, listening, and post-listening there, with pre-listening looking at strategic planning, so thinking metacognitively, how our students listen, asking them to think about how they're going to plan to listen, and also thinking about the language knowledge that they know already, whether that be about the topic or whether it be about vocabulary. We can then move on to the listening task, and depending on the course demands, this will be either a gap fill, note taking, listening to a lecture, or even test practice, so that's quite flexible depending on what your teaching context is. And then that brings us to the post-listening. So we can think about using the content which we've just listened to, thinking about the activities which our students have just completed, so they can use that for communicative purposes. Add to that this extra frame at the end, which is the evaluation and reflection frame, where our students can think about what their listening difficulties are and think about how they can address those. So that leads us to how we can select our TED Talks. And although this is quite a well-used resource, I'd just like to give you a brief overview of what they are and why I chose them for my particular study. So what are TED Talks? They started off in 1984 as just a one-off conference back in the States, and they're a primary listening resource used mainly in academic contexts, but they are used in others as well. We can see them as content-rich talks, which started off as technology, education, and design, but that's branched off into medical and business and other types of topics now. And of course, we have free online access, and a lot of the talks have transcripts and subtitles, more so which are in English, but they are also available in a lot of different languages. So when I last checked, it was about 40. They come in all different lengths, so 3 to 20 minutes tend to be the most common range, and they are engaging and innovative with ideas worth spreading, which of course is what their tagline is. So the suitability of TED Talks for our particular classrooms, result in this. So we've got different types of topics. So you can see TED Ed for education, TED Med for medicine, and all ranges of topics. They are said in real time and they are authentic, and they do have visual clues. So if you choose the correct talk or one that was more suitable for your class, you do have PowerPoints and you do have some kind of visual. A lot of them do have a selection of transcripts and subtitles available in different languages. And of course, we have different styles and different discourses, such as rhetorical questions, redundancy, paralinguistic features, which can also help our students to understand kind of the real spoken and listening context which they may be in. However, we do need to worry about it being ungraded. And if we are going to ask our students to listen to them in extensive situations, extensive listening situations, they could be manipulated and they could be pausing it. So then it kind of loses that authenticity a little bit. So to help me with my selection, I found that Romanelli et al. Had a TED Talk versus academic lecture aspects list. And what they did was they compared some TED Talks with academic lectures, and they compared the different aspects which you can see down the side. There were 12 altogether, so certainly in my teaching context, I found that the time frame was quite important to consider. So thinking about something which was 18 minutes, although personally I would think something under 12 minutes would probably be engaging enough for an upper intermediate or advanced level student or below. And also we need to think about the style. So I chose a lot of different TED Talks which were very, very similar in style. So as my students were watching that, they were getting more and more familiar with the presenters week on and week out. You also need to think about the structure, and this can be very useful when you're thinking about the other course objectives. So thinking about if there is a problem solution presentation coming up, or if there is an essay about an argument or about research. So you can think about a structure which kind of fits in with those course elements as well. And of course, I mentioned visuals before. I have found in my experience that using a TED Talks with visuals rather than not are usually more helpful, simply because it is supporting what the speaker is saying, and it can help maybe the student to kind of reinforce or confirm their understanding a lot more easily than if they didn't have any visuals. So as you can see in your chat, I've put in a worksheet there. So if I could ask you to just have a look at page 1, I'll just go through some of the ways that you can select your own TED Talk before we'll break into a breakout room very, very quickly, just so and then you can try this yourself. So first of all, of course, we just go to the TED Talk website. I think it is very, very close to becoming a paid site, but so far so good. And we can still search for things for free. So you can just go to www.ted.com. And there are different ways, which I'll show you in screenshots in a second, where you can just search for your topic of choice. So I'm at a business university at the moment, so I can just type in business, or there is actually a subtopic for business, which I can just go to, or you can use the search function to find any of the SDGs or any of the topics or any of the themes that you are currently using in your own courses. You can also go to the watch function as well to narrow your search. So there's quite a few ways that you can search for a particular talk. You can also then have a look, once you've found your particular topic, for the aspects which Romanelli et al. Suggest. And as I said before, maybe 4 of these aspects are probably more useful. You may find that some others are particularly suitable for your context. So thinking about the time frame, I usually choose TED Talks which are under 12 minutes, just so and then that's going to be engaging enough for my students. I look at the style of the speaker. So I think about, are they engaging, are they moving, or are they just standing still? Because I want my students to be able to kind of watch them and enjoy watching them. Thinking about the structure. So is this fitting in with another assignment that I have or another course that they are doing? And also making sure that there are some kind of visuals, just so then they can break up the speech to the visual, so then they can kind of check their understanding as they go on. You can also check if the TED Talk has different language options. Some people like to use either the English ones while the speaker is speaking in English, or Japanese in our context, just while they are listening to the English. Or also you can use different language options if you're setting it as homework. You can also check if the particular talk has a speed option. So, so all of them have normal, but then you may have slightly slower speeds at 0.75, or you might have a slightly quicker speed at 1.25. You can also check if there is the transcript and subtitles, which are interactive. So by that, we have the transcript, which the student can read as they listen to it, or you can have subtitles, which are on the talk. So just to show you what the screenshot looks like. So if you go to TED.com, you can see here that you've got a watch function here. You've also got a search function here as well. So you can just go to browse the library of TED Talks, and then that will give you this page here, where you can then search for the talks of your choice. The topics are the pre-subtopics that they already have chosen, and you can have a look at your language and duration as well. To be honest, I just kind of have a look at my topics here, and then I go through 2, 3, 4, which is on page 1 of your handout. So if you have a look at maybe a topic which is more suited for your context, once you find that, you can see you don't really need to look at the time in terms of your pickings, because it comes up on the actual thumbnail here. You also get the name of the speaker, and you also get the how recent it's been posted, and also the title as well. So based on this information, we should be able to go in, and then that will narrow down our choices in terms of our selection. So I'd like to break up into smaller groups here. I see we have a few more people join us. Hello, welcome, good evening. So I may break us up into, James, are you staying here with me? Is that right? Okay, so I'll break us up just into 2 rooms, if that's okay. And you're welcome to either talk about the TED Talks that you have selected yourself in the past, or you can also think about maybe trying to find one which would be suitable in your context following those 4 steps right now. I won't be in the breakout room for too long. I'll put you in there for about maybe 3 or 4 minutes. There are also some questions on the worksheet if you do want to talk about those. Okay, thank you, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Hold on, I just need to take James out of the room.
No, I plan to stay in one space just to stay here and welcome people, and then I have my other computer set up to go to the breakout room. So creating 2, or would you prefer a 3rd breakout room? Okay.
Okay, well, let's go for 2 now, and then we'll see how we go. Thank you. Okay,
right.
So those rooms are open. If you'd like to try and choose a TED Talk, there are also questions on the worksheets which you can discuss.
What format is the worksheet?
Word. Would you like it in just?
No. I thought it was a PDF. Okay, I should be able to open it.
Yeah, I could put a PDF on there as well.
Got it. No problem. Though my computer thought it was a PDF, so I couldn't figure out why it wouldn't open, but I got it now.
Cool. I'll just share the PDF with you as well, James, just in case someone wants the PDF.
I need to get to John, because my mouse is not playing nicely with my Zoom session, and so
would you like me to?
There we go, John. Just a minute, I'll be there. Yes. And
I'll stay here.
I don't know if the other room.
No,
That's okay.
we're good.
That's okay.
All right, and then just one last question. Naheen, you want me to the questions? You want me to send those off at this time?
Yes, or everyone should have them on the worksheet anyway. So
okay.
More about selecting it. So feel free to join John, and I'll stay here.
Okay. That was another concern that was about Matters, was my copying and pasting. I'm using 2 different web browsers, and then that was not helping Matters. So, all right, I'm going to go talk with John, and thank you.
Okay, welcome back everyone. I hope that you found a good TED Talk. So please leave that screen open because we're going to need it to work out our vocabulary with that in just a second. But thank you for discussing your questions with your group as well. So I'd like to show you now a little bit about how to grade the TED Talk. So now that we've selected a particular topic or a particular speaker for our classes, we need to think about if it's suitable in terms of the level. So what we can do is think about how we can use vocabulary to grade a TED Talk. And basically with Nation's general vocabulary, he believes that we need a huge amount of high frequency words to be able to understand something, whether it's in reading or in listening. So we need to think more closely about the 2,000 most frequently used words in English. So the first 1,000 words or the second 1,000 words. And TED Talks actually, I think we can go up to about the first 5,000 words with scaffolding, as Coxhead and Walls revealed in their 2012 study. We also need to think about academic vocabulary. So if we can measure how many words from the academic word list and the word families are in a text, then that can also help us with the suitability of our particular choice. And we can also think about off-list words, and these tend to be the ones which are things like proper nouns or pronouns, more general words if they don't fit into the general word list, rather if they don't fit into the academic word list, or if they fall out of that particular 5,000 or above frequency realm. So what we can do is we can think about creating a vocabulary profile selection for our TED Talk. So what we can do is use lextutor.ca, which is on the second page of your handout, I believe. And we can just copy and paste the transcript from the TED Talk that we've chosen into the vocab profile. If you're not able to do that today, you can just use any text just to see how it works. But what we do is once we have the transcript for whatever listening text we've chosen, we can then run the transcript through Lexical Tutor, and we can think about how we can develop the vocabulary profiles so then we can use them in lessons, and also think about the suitability of the resource that we've chosen for our classes. So we can create listening materials, vocabulary materials, reading materials. So there's a lot of things that we can do with it. If you do open the LexTutor vocabulary profile website, you can see that we can use the VP Classic, which is the most basic one, which is a good one to get us started if you've not used this one before. And you can see in the middle here that you can just copy and paste the main text. We can then just click on AWL, which is our academic word list, and it's cut off here, but you can see that we've got proper nouns. So if you check on please recognize the proper nouns, the names, and then it will do that also. Once you do run your profile through the profiler, you'll come out with this box here, which can be then downloaded to Excel as well, which is quite useful. And we can see here that it gives us the information of the suitability of the text that we've chosen. So we can see that the K1 words, or the first 1,000 most frequently used words in English, total 83% in this particular transcript. And then we've got our K2, our second 1,000 words, totaling 4.7. So altogether, we've got 87%, which is a bit on the lower side. But then once we add our 5.63% of academic words, then we are kind of almost at our magic number, 95, 98% of vocabulary knowledge that we need. You can also then scroll down and you can see that we've got the transcript on your left, and to the right, you've got all of those different words. So in the blue, that would be our first 1,000. So you can see that the colors correspond with the box, which would be at the top of your screen. And the green words would be your K2, or the second 1,000. Your yellow words would be your academic word list, and the red would be the off list. So basically from this, you can then even scroll down, and it's got it much more clearly. And you can then pull the words from these different lists to create your vocabulary list for a class. So you could use that in before listening, while listening, or even to check understanding after listening. In terms of my study, I used a lot of the academic word list just because I was in a pre-sessional context. So I wanted the students to build up their academic word knowledge for not only their entrance into university level courses, but also for their arts exams. So they needed to find out what the AW words were, and that's the one that I focused on. Although if you are in a general learning context, then of course you can use the K1, K2 and so on words, which would be more appropriate. For the teachers, what I did for each lesson was I then copy and pasted the information for them, so they'd be able to see the vocabulary profile selection for each of the TED Talks which I chose. So you can see here that you've got the box of, which was right at the top of our vocab profile. So it shows you what the percentage is for each of the different frequency levels, and also how many academic words we have. And then below that, I just listed the academic word lists and also the off types. So basically things like proper nouns or names. So again, if we could just break there, I would like to suggest, if you can't get the transcript from your TED Talk, I don't know how easy it is more recently, but if you would like to just even take any text that you have and try it with the vocab profiler, you'll be able to see the words and the divisions which I've just shown you. So that will be on page 2 of your handout. I'll just open those rooms again. So I'll give you around the same amount of time, just so and then you can compare your vocab profiles. Okay, if you have any questions, please broadcast message.
All right.
I think Welcome back. It started recording automatically, James. That's pretty handy. Okay, so hopefully the vocabulary profile was helpful. It is a little bit difficult to get used to and to kind of like read all the information. It can be a bit overwhelming, but hopefully you've used it before, or it can be useful when you do use it in the future. I'll just move on to the next part, which is teaching, and then hopefully we can have a bit of a discussion concerning all of the things that we've tried today. So let me just share my screen for the last part. All right, so we'll move on then to how we can teach with TED Talks. And I'd just like to share that framework that we looked at the beginning of the session. And remember, it had like the hopefully 3 familiar stages that we use in our listening. So we've got our pre-listening, we've got our listening task of when we're actually listening to something and listening out for something, our post-listening, and then our evaluation and reflection. So I'd like to give you some task ideas, and then we can think about how we can use the graded resource in this particular teaching context. So first of all, with pre-listening tasks, it's important to have a mix of both bottom-up and top-down activities. So here you can see that we've got our top-down predictions and photo speculation. So we're thinking about the context, we're thinking about the background, the topic, how much we know about it. We then also could have some of those bottom-up activities. So we can use our vocab profile to create a vocabulary box for our students, and then we can pre-teach vocabulary. We can also just point out some keywords from that particular talk as well. We can also maybe then just think about different strategies. So thinking about how we're going to plan our listening, how we are going to listen today, if there is a particular thing that we're going to do, and also think about our prior experience with the topic. So then we're really thinking about how we're going to listen in the classroom before we actually start doing it. To give you an idea of how I put this into a lesson, here is the metacognitive frame for the before listening tasks. And what you can see here in section A is actually taken from a listening questionnaire, which is focusing on metacognitive strategies and asking the students about how they listen, what they find difficult, and what it is that they would like to do today. There are also some other top-down and bottom-up activities here. So looking at basically how we're going to listen, and also using the vocabulary so we can inference and maybe think about the topic a little bit, as well as the vocabulary and how it's going to be involved in the talk today. With the actual before listening tasks, which are perhaps a little more familiar, we can ask the students if they have listened to anything or read anything which is similar to the topic. And then we can create some kind of contextual prompts using photos or images which are either taken from the talk or which are going to be presented in the talk to help maybe think about the idea and to activate schemata a little bit. We can also then give them an opportunity to think about their predictions. So what do they think it's about? And then here in E, you can see the vocabulary box, which I've created from the academic word list, which was created on the vocab profiler before. So there are the words taken from the academic word list. So with that in mind, we've kind of prompted the students, prepared the students for the topic at hand, and we're thinking about while listening tasks now. And there's quite a few different things that we can do, whether it's vocabulary or thinking more contextually about the listening. So we can think about focusing our students on keywords or group words, getting them to think about newer words, whether that's thinking about unknown words or their meanings, or we can also think more about the actual speaker. So listening for voice, listening in sections, to get them to think about how they listen, or just comprehension questions, so answering questions or true and false. So again, a range of different activities which we could try here dependent on your context. This is something that I tried. As I said, I was in quite an academic English context. So what I did was I developed their note-taking skills using this course of study, and I took the keywords which were from the vocabulary and I used them as prompts here or as cues. And this is taken from the transcript as well, for the TED Talk, thinking about the order that the student will hear these words in, and thinking about what are the key concepts. So you can basically look at each of the paragraphs in the transcript and take these words as the from the topic sentence. So then they are introducing the ideas as the student is listening to them. This big space here is for students to write notes, and this can be in any way, shape or form which fits your class. I usually focus on a different skill each week. So we focus on abbreviations, we focus on keywords, and I ask them to kind of practice that. So after the course of 5 weeks, they're building up quite nicely a different repertoire of being able to write notes. What's very important here is that we're not looking for full sentences. I mean, cognitively, it's too much of a demand. We don't really want our students to be kind of transcribing, and also just being able to write down what the key information is. So we are looking more at quality rather than quantity. Just because they have more notes, it doesn't mean that they've understood it better. We do also have the transcript. So when you do get the chance to properly copy and paste and format the TED Talks transcript, it can look a little bit like this. I don't tend to offer this to my students in class, but it is available for them after class or at the end of the lesson as well. But depending on what level you have, and if you are maybe using or integrating any transcript type of activities, then this can be useful to introduce at this stage. We then move on to the post-listening task. So after completing the pre and the while listening activities, we can, of course, check our answers. So we usually have some kind of comprehension check at the end of our lessons. We've got a speed summary. I do a lot of drawing with my students, even though they're university students, and they love it. It takes away a lot of the pressure, and it means that they can draw their interpretations, their expressions, without being kind of bogged down by spelling or grammar or trying to find the language for it. The after listening box is returning back to the before listening page that I showed you previously. So thinking about what their prediction was, and then thinking about whether they were right or whether it was different. And it's important at this stage just to say that it doesn't matter if they were incorrect in their prediction, as long as they had a prediction, and then they can kind of maybe think about how that was different, and that itself is in a talking point. We can then compare, we can have discussions between pairs or peers, and we can retell the story. They can pretend to be the speaker themselves. They can use the transcript at this point to see if there were any difficult words. We can work on pronunciation, intonation, chunking at this stage as well. We can also think about the other skills, so writing summaries, writing opinions, as well as metacognitively thinking about reflection questions and journal writing. To give you an example of my own after listening lessons, so you can see G here, it does focus more on kind of product-based activities of what is the answer. So here in the colored boxes, you can see the prompts which were in the while listening. So that would have been the first one, the second one, the third one, fourth one. And then there is a short kind of definition or meaning as to how that particular prompt or cue was explained in the talk. When you get to H, or at the bottom here, you can see that these are the words that were introduced right at the beginning. So lots of recycling, lots of transferring to kind of refocus and to kind of double check and come back to things that were introduced in the first stage. And then also thinking more about opinions, so we can think more about context and adding our own ideas. So and then we can get a more abstract opinion from the students as well. There were answer keys which were given to the students and the teachers as well. So this was used within the whole department. If looking at an example of a metacognitive journal, I use this from a selection of different papers. So from Chen 2016, from Graham 2017, and also from Rowe 2012. And you can see that we have a summary and we have evaluation, which is basically on the talk. And then the three main prompts here of my observations, reflection and goals, really getting the student to think about their process, so more process-based teaching, and thinking about their reflection on the listening experience itself. So their observation is maybe what they did and what went well. Their reflection was what was tough, what was difficult, and their goals would be what they want to set themselves in terms of goals or difficulties to get over in their next listening. So that leads us to our alternative approaches. I think we'll kind of discuss which ones we use ourselves in our Q&A, if that's okay. So with the alternative approaches, that just gives you an overview of those 3 different stages. And at this point, I'd just like to point out, with my actual lessons and the one that you just saw there, I would spend about 20 minutes on each stage. So 20 minutes on pre-listening, 20 minutes on while listening, 20 minutes on post-listening, and 15 minutes on the journal, because I actually use that as a research tool. So it is very, very important to have each of the stages to be equal in length. We do, I think, sometimes have a tendency to spend a lot longer on pre-listening and while listening than we run out of post-listening time. So it is important, I think, in terms of being able to follow up on those ideas and to be able to give the student an opportunity to reflect on their listening, to have those equal stages in tow. Here are some different listening resources as well. So although those ideas were discussed with TED Talks, my hope is that we can kind of use these different approaches for different resources. So we have so many different resources which are not necessarily teaching tools. The first 2 or 3 certainly are, so they sometimes do come as graded resources, but we are using maybe YouTube a lot more now. There are a lot more podcasts which are available as well for our classes too. So hopefully being able to use the transcripts and being able to grade them that way and use these particular listening activities will be helpful for different contexts. In terms of the student comments and using this type of lesson and this type of method, they felt that sharing ideas with other people after listening, so having that interaction, not only with the text but with each other, was very helpful. They found the vocabulary just quite comforting, and it built their confidence if they were able to learn about what particular words would be coming up in before listening first, and then be able to use them, as it says in keywords and notes in the while listening, and then be able to follow up with their peers at the end. They were also able to check definitions, but sometimes, as the second comment from the bottom says, I cannot write keynotes, I just wrote some words that I knew. But as long as they're being able to recognize those words, that's perhaps progress for that student. For their future goals, they said that they could perhaps focus their attention on the speaker a little bit more, so they knew what to listen for or how to follow a talk a bit better. They also understood more about the meaning of the text and they didn't give up. So the cues kind of helped them kind of to refocus if they did get lost while listening. They enjoyed the process because they were able to talk about it, and they found that their peers also had perhaps similar difficulties, so they were able to talk about that and problem solve. And they did like the idea that their comprehension did get better as the semester went on, so that of course helped their confidence as well. So being able to offer our students a structured program like this in our listening classes does offer them the opportunity to use strategies. There's a structured pedagogy which they can be familiar with, which is a routine. It can also help develop their different learning styles and their motivation, and give them a range of authentic resources to use while using top-down and product and process-based approaches. It does give us some kind of familiar instruction for us and for them, and it also gives them more strategy, awareness, and learner responsibility when it comes to listening. So hopefully we have a bit of time for questions. Thank you for listening, and thank you for trying those techniques with me today.
Sweet. I see that we are, by official community standards at time, but I noticed that there are some comments or thoughts and ideas, a couple of hand claps. I have a couple thoughts and ideas too, but before I take full advantage of my position holding the mouse button and all the point and clicks, I want to open it up for the floor. Any questions, comments, or ideas to share?
Hi, quick question, Naheen, and sorry if you said this. Could you tell us again, for all 3 parts, the pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening, how much time do you usually use?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky because I had 75 minutes. I know our lessons all range here. So I used 20 minutes for each of the sections. And then I
Good.
had 15 minutes for the journal because that was just extra. And some people don't even want to use that sometimes. So if you have 45 minutes, you know, just divide it up 15, 15, 15. The important thing is to have it as equal stages.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Do you do your while listening? Do you only play that once?
So with the TED Talks, I play them twice. And they're both at normal speed in the classroom. If they've also had like TED Talks, there's their own kind of journal homework and they're able to do what they please. So transcripts, subtitles, different speeds. But in the classroom, I will play it once and they will write their notes. And then I will give them 1 minute to discuss with each other or to finish kind of tidying up their notes, if you like. And then they will swap pen colors or they will swap to pen to pencil and then they will listen to it again. And some people, they just sit and listen the first time and write loads the second time. Other people are vice versa, but twice is definitely better. And that kind of takes away that test feeling as well, you know, when you're listening to TOEIC or IELTS, it's only one time. So yeah, they're a bit more confident with that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have you found the way that the students are helping or assisting each other? For example, the topics or the range of abilities. Is there an encouragement to have the stronger students take a step back, or to take that much more advantage of maybe they are deeper along into those yellow and red words, green words, and so that they can they explain the definitions, or using Japanese as a word to be able to explain the definitions more? Do you have any kind of set rules on some of that? Stronger students helping you?
Well, I mean, of course, the dream is that you're in a class and everyone's the same level, right? But
right.
In those mixed level classes, I mean, I've just got a blanket rule, really, like you can just sit with your friends. And I think if you're sitting with your friends, then it doesn't really matter what your level is, you're going to be probably more inclined to help them. So I've taught this both in monolingual and multilingual situations. So in Japan, like they will basically help each other. The idea is with that vocab box as well is, as you can see, that there is a range of different words. So they do range from K1 to K5, even with the academic words. So the idea is that hopefully they'll know about 30%, 40% of the words, so that vocab box won't be overwhelming. So they can either kind of just look up the words that they know, and they can use their online dictionaries to do that. They can ask their friends, they can split it up and do it as teamwork. They can just ask each other. So there's a few different ways. And that's the same as well. Like when I was doing my study, I basically just broke it up. So there were 4 lines in the vocab box and 4 people in a group. So you were line 1, you were line 2, you were line 3, you were line 4. So you can do it that way if they don't really know each other that well.
Great.
I give them the sheet 2 days before. I put it up on the LMS, and if they want to look at vocab, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to.
Yeah, that's another point. Like since I got to Japan, like the talk for next week, that would be their vocab list the week before. So yeah, that is a great way to do it as well, because then they're prepared. Thank you.
Sweet. Well, we will draw this to a close. Thank you very much, Naheen, for your presentation and for sharing us the resources. We can certainly continue the conversation over in Discord or in the World Wide Web somewhere. And then hopefully we can maybe make a trip down to JALT, Japan, or you can make a return trip here to Korea sometime soon. But thank you for being a part of International Conference for Korea TESOL 2022. And thank you all. If you are watching this at a later time and date, please follow us, and we'll be happy to welcome you to future events. Take care, everyone. Have a good time.
Thank you, James.
Bye now.
Thank you, Naheen.
Thank you. Bye-bye.